Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you are listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. On this episode, I have the amazing Dan Bowen. Now, Dan is a man of many hats. First and foremost, he always says he's a dad first, but he is a podcast host of one of my favorite podcasts, AI in
Oh, thank you.
Education, with his co-host, and they have a right royal time. So it's if you haven't had a listen, get onto it. He's also a PhD student. He works with Microsoft as a AI strategist, as well as other things that Microsoft do. Dan, welcome to the show. I'm sure I've only just touched on a little bit of what you do, but welcome.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you so much. Yeah, you missed out the luthier bit because that's my favorite thing that I do, which is like making guitars. So that's how I get my kind of relaxation in, I suppose.
Well, hey,
So that's always
really
fun.
creative. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks very much for inviting me on today. You know, I listen to your podcast a lot, and you've got lots of amazing people that you've spoken to, and it's great to get insights and stories from everybody, from Vince to Matt and Nick Jackson. You know, it's just been great.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a selfish endeavor, as you probably know as well, because you get to chat to some amazing people, hear the inside scoop, without actually having to do much more than just have a good conversation with some with a colleague that you'd love to have a chat with. So,
Yeah.
thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. It's one of those things where I just try and find some really cool people with really cool stories. Who are just doing what they're doing in education and trying to get some good news and good
Mm.
vibes out there to sort of counteract a lot of the crap that actually comes against us as educators.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I did our podcast initially. It's like it was 6 years old last week actually, but the reason I did it was because when I was going out and about, I was seeing different teachers, seeing some amazing stuff happening, and you know, originally when I started it, you know, I was doing it for a selfish reason. There's some of my customers from a Microsoft point of view, because I work in the education team, um, they were doing amazing things, and I wanted to get their voices out there, and I didn't want to do like an official Microsoft like case study, and it goes through all the rigmarole of that, and you've got to get permission. And I thought, well, these people have got good stories. Let's just hear them and put them out, and then it was just to try to get my customers exposure for what they were doing, which was amazing stuff. And it's not a Microsoft thing, our podcast. It's like agnostic to everything, but I just pay for it on my credit card, and and Ray does the editing, and I help him out with that, and we do the socials ourselves. And yeah, it's just speaking to good people and good humans in education and see what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and so we're a bit of a kindred spirit in that sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but I guess first and foremost, as a professional, you're in education first. So you're
yeah,
a
yeah.
teacher. You've worked your way through there and through. I could read your bio. You've done stuff with Ofsted. You've done
Mm.
strategist. You've led teams. You've done all these sort of things. But behind all of that, what's your why for doing that? Like, what kicked you off into that direction, that career?
Yeah, well, I think it took me along. You know, it swept me up and brought me through. And um, I started off doing the teaching, like you said, in the classroom, and then I did that for 10, 15 years or whatever. Then I was advising on the national strategies in the UK, and that's the unfortunate thing where you get. And it happens all the time. It's a cycle, but you get really good teachers that end up leaving the classroom and then teaching other teachers, going to the department. I went to the local authority and I was doing that. Then you end up like doing school improvement stuff. And I suppose the lens of school improvement, why I went into teaching was that I just thought it was bloody good fun, actually. To be honest, I really enjoyed spending time with the kids, and you get such good relationships going, and you can you see kids learning, and you light people up, and and I was in a comprehensive school in London, so it wasn't a easy school to teach in, but it was a great school, and you'd have all kinds of things, and all kinds of troubles going on there, and the kids who were kind of struggling were the ones that you get affinity to. I came from a mining background in Wales, where grandparents and things came from that kind of area, so it was always a public education thing in my mind. And I think that was instilled in me to get everybody to raise all the boats to have that equity business. And I know a lot of people have said that on their why on your pod, but yeah, I think it's about just making sure everybody has a fair go and making sure that, when I was, and the other thing is, the other angle was when I was doing school inspections, and people do knock the Ofsted thing. For people who don't know, it's like a ombudsman that goes in and looks at lessons, and it gets a bit of a rap in the UK. But what it did do was allow you to come in objectively and look at lessons and things. And you could see that some kids weren't getting a good deal, to be honest with you. You could see that some teachers are struggling. Some people, especially in primary schools, if you get a bad teacher, even as a parent, I know some of the teachers my kids have had, and some might be ill, some might just be doing other things and missing for 3 days a week or 2 days a week because they're working for the department. And, it really makes a difference if you get poor education. Like we know through COVID, like if you miss out a certain amount of like theory, like say maths, like my daughter did in COVID, she hasn't got somebody helping her. So therefore it's very hard to catch up. So I think there's also an element of let's support teachers, let's help, because the impact is massive. And I suppose it's just making sure that, I can do what I can to help people, make sure that everybody's effective, really. And I suppose that's my why, just equity, diversity, bringing everybody through and supporting um, uh, teachers who are kind of such a valued profession, and so important for society, especially in the current climate with all our friends in America.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thing that how, and I had this conversation just recently about in more Western societies that the value placed on teachers has dropped dramatically.
Mm.
But then you find and I know I think you've mentioned in a couple of the research things that you've done, you and Ray, that the, I guess, Nordic, Icelandic, Scandinavian countries have a tremendous value placed upon, and also I know in China, Shane Leaning was telling me about the value that's placed on educators in mainland China. But it just seems so weird that we get such a hard knock, but everyone who's given us grief went through school, and it's just like, where's
Oh yeah, you're spot on with that. Yeah, I think you're right. And the one thing that's good, I had a conversation today with an independent school. So I went into a school today. I was helping them with some bits and pieces around AI, and they were doing their budget, and rightly so, and this has happened in all departments in Australia, and for people listening abroad as well. Teacher salaries now are being pushed above all else. So they're looking to cut technology investments and budgeting to make sure that teacher salaries are going up, and they've got inflation level pay rises, which is exactly what it should be. It's still not great. It's still not as good as it should be. It's still not as good as the private sector, but it's where it should be. And those conversations are great. And yeah, if you've got to drop some of the technology to pay teachers more, then absolutely.
Yeah, look, and pays them like it's a great thing. And look, I've been blessed to work in some very very wealthy schools when I was in Sydney, and so I was paid. I was paid very well. I mean, they had income coming in, so they could do it.
Hmm.
Moving up to Queensland, I've worked in some smaller schools. And it's like they want to do more for their teachers, but they're just like they're hamstrung. And then going from state to state, it's like, well, this is what we pay teachers, and this is what we pay teachers, and never the two will meet. But I think as someone who's been teaching for a little bit over 20 years now, look, yes, give me a pay rise any day of the week, and I'll take it very happily. But I think what a lot of teachers are crying out for is let's reduce the just do this and just do this and just do
Oh,
this.
yes.
And I
100%.
guess in with some of the consultancy work you do, I guess with Microsoft, as you travel around to all these schools, you probably hear that a lot. That it's just like, well, I just need something that's going to help me save time, and it's going to help me
Yeah,
do,
that's right.
and it's going to allow me a bit more freedom. So
And you see a lot of that, and a lot of the AI stuff at the minute. You've got to be careful, obviously, when you listen to or read reports that certain companies are making. And this is the same from everything, right? It's like if you see an AI tool that's free, you got to say, well, why is that free? The old adage of, if it's free, you are the product, and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, the research out there, we're seeing a lot of research with the products that, from a Microsoft point of view, that we're doing there, where they're saving 9.5 hours a week of admin, and we're getting that ratified by some universities. So Latrobe looking at that at the minute, and ACU, and they do. Like, we try to step back away from those things, because you don't want to be. And when myself and Ray talk about a lot of these reports, we say, hey, this is written by, this has got like a Salesforce backing, or a Microsoft backing, or a Google backing. Actually, you don't see a lot from Google at the minute, but you will see more and more stuff coming out, and it will refer to saving teachers time. But again, like Leon Furs always talks about this, it's about the quality time as well. You can save that time, but they can fill it with other stuff. So we're going to try to get off the saving teachers time and actually thinking about, better productivity methods, I suppose. But yeah, absolutely. There's so much. I don't miss that, but even like before Gen AI, I remember doing school reports in England, and you basically, we were opening the kimono, and I was to like the way the reports used to get done. But we had like lottery systems, so it was like a comment bank. So you had kind of good, bad, in different comments, and I remember they used to say, Charlotte is a good student, Charlotte is a, whatever, and all these generic comments. You could edit them as a head of department, and then you'd do a lottery ticket then, so you'd see the kid's name, you'd see Phil, and then you'd go like A1, B2, C3, D4, and it was just supposed to speed up the report writing process, and we've been looking for things like that for quite some time, and a lot of time, as a department, in Australia, spend a lot of time reading reports and checking for quality reports and things like that. So there's a lot of admin that goes on, and it's very important admin as well. But some stuff is just, you go into teaching to light the fire. You don't go into teaching to write, like, well, actually, that being said, you always start well, don't you, when you write the reports, and you feel as if you're doing something. And some people obviously do sit there and spend a lot of time writing them. But if you were to write an individual report for every kid, it becomes very, very onerous, especially if you're teaching subjects like you do, where you're teaching, multiple cohorts, every hour somebody else changes or whatever. And, me teaching IT, I had, I don't know, 400 kids, and it was very hard to do the reports. So yeah, saving teacher time is a biggie.
Yeah, and it's just like you said, it's like, well, are we saving time to just add another job, or are we, and I think we need to be, I think rather than saving time, we need to look at efficiency, so that we can, I'm happy to save time and get rid of some of this admin, or make it more, I guess more automated, so that it's just doing it, and it sort of knows who I am. And look, the Gen AI stuff is still very, very, very young, and it's, has its flaws when you're doing stuff. So I still need to check everything that I do anyway. But I think eventually it'll get to that time where it'll be pretty good, and I won't have to worry about it, so that then I can do what I want as an educator, which is invest back into the children in my classroom.
Yeah, you're right. And the other side to it, just, it's interesting you spot my thoughts there. The other thing is, sometimes you're looking for the wrong solution. So Gen AI to write in reports is kind of the wrong thing that people are looking at all the time. Because where we should be at is the other side of AI, which we've been working on for a while, and lots of schools are doing, which is getting better data platforms. So if you get a data platform that's got day-to-day, attendance and results for the kids, and their marks, and things that have gone through the, process within the system, then you don't really need the report, because as a parent, you already informed. It's like, you'd have a little agent to kind of, you can ask questions of it. Hey, how's Dan doing this week? Summarize his week last week for me. Let me know anything that he's got outstanding, that kind of stuff. That's not really Gen AI writing reports. It's kind of like, well, why do we write reports in the first place? And, as a parent, I, like, my son finished year 12 like last week, and I grabbed the the report that he was looking at, and all him and his mates were comparing their like attendance and stuff like that, and who had the lowest attendance and all this kind of stuff. And I even looked at that report, and a lot of the time those things are out of date anyway, especially with the NAPLAN and stuff, which is like months out of date. So I think sometimes you look at the reports and we go, well, there's better ways to do that anyway, like the just-in-time reporting where you don't need, let's knock reporting completely out of the way and think outside the box and just don't bother with that, or do it in a completely different mode or modality.
Yeah, well, where I'm currently working, and as you know, I had a conversation with you. I reached out because, you know, there's Microsoft have, great products, I've worked in Apple schools, Google schools,
Mm.
Microsoft schools. So, everyone has their goods and bads, and pros and cons to everything, as we know. But currently in a Microsoft school, and so we changed our reporting system to make it easier for parents, so that they could just grab it on, get a link, look on their phone, and it's more
Mm.
of a portfolio style platform. Now it's a bit tricky setting it up on my end. So any of those Microsoft mates of yours, if they can make some
Okay.
really good tutorials on Sway, that'd be fantastic. Excel, Word, PowerPoint,
Yeah,
anything else. There's more than you can find. Sway, not so much. But
you're right. Yeah.
we found that once we got the knack of it, and once we got the kids involved in it, and they're uploading stuff and telling their parents what they've done and how they've learnt stuff, and then the feedback that we've got, straight away, we wouldn't normally get back from parents. They're like, "Oh, this is amazing! Oh, it's great to see what the kids can do, and oh, it's great to
Mm.
hear their voice." And so it's reporting, but we're doing it in a portfolio format, in an easy to digest format, and in a way that I think more effectively communicates their learning and what they've actually, and the knowledge that they've gained, rather than
Yes.
ticking the boxes. So
100%. Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing, and that's what kills me a little bit inside at the minute when I'm seeing there's a lot of back to basics teaching happening in Australia as well, like the good thing about Australia compared to like the UK and the US is that there's so many innovative teachers in there, and you've got the flexibility to do things differently. Like you've got Greg Miller down here in New South Wales, where he's completely blown up the timetable and said, we can teach the curriculum in 3 days a week. What are we going to do for the other two? People like John Goes down in Maryland in a primary school. And he's going, we're going to get the kids in at 7 o'clock and get them out by 1 p.m. and get them doing project-based stuff. The project-based learning stuff's amazing, and the way that it engages kids, and there's so much research and evidence that loads of research like Jane Hunter and the like have done in Australia around project-based learning and all of this kind of stuff, which is phenomenal. But there is a inequity going on because there are some school systems who are struggling massively with numeracy, maths, and they fall in behind hugely. So their answer to that is to ditch all the evidence-based stuff and going back to, rote learning, and let's teach every teacher how to teach ratio. Now, there are pros and cons on those things, but it kills me a little bit inside when we do that. I love the fact that you're doing the portfolio-based stuff, because I bet you're getting some amazing like engagement with it.
yeah, and especially with I'm working in a school that is focused with kids on the AS, on ASD spectrum, and so they want to get involved. And any teacher out there who's listening to this, if you want to learn about how to be a teacher and how to re-understand how everyone, go do a day in a school that is just
Mm.
outside of mainstream, that's outside of your area, because I'm working with these kids and they are amazing students. They have their challenges with like any student,
Mm.
but the way they think, their creativity, the way they look at things, it's put education into a whole new light for me. Um, and how do I encompass or encapsulate all of that so that they get to their next level of success.
Mm.
Because like these guys, the guys I'm teaching, they're going to find their place in the world. They don't. It's hard to find their place in a mainstream school. Um,
Yes.
but as adults, we go, oh yeah, he's good at that. She's good at that. Oh, if you want this done that way, go see them.
Yeah.
And but it's our job as educators to help them get to that level of success.
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and like in Microsoft as a tech company, we massively looking for kind of diversity in hiring. So there's a big inclusion like drive that's happened. It's not just a drive; it's actually embedded in the kind of entire HR stuff, because we find like software engineers, project managers, like people or on the spectrum or neurodivergent, like are really, really good at some of the hard problems and some of the kind of software development side to all of this. It's really like a good affordance to get things done and get things done really well in the security area and software engineering. It's just and if it like I think there was the Xbox kind of mantra is when we all play, we all win, and that's kind of very much the thing that we kind of like try to aspire to as employers for students that you're producing, as well as actually supporting everybody in the workplace from all kinds of divergent backgrounds, so that the devices and the software that they use supports them. Because it's just phenomenal. You're absolutely right. I think I've worked in several. I've had several specialist units in schools that I've worked in, and I've supported schools, special schools in London, quite severe ones. I remember a kid pulled a knife on me once, which is quite fun. But yeah, there's it's students who've got those needs. It's very difficult in mainstream schools, and they can excel. I remember actually one anecdote. I don't know if you know Megan Town. She works at Canva now. She used to work for Microsoft. We were doing a like a Surface, like a hardware thing, and I couldn't make it. And I sent Megan along. I said, "Please, can you go? There's a new school opening up in Parramatta Diocese. Can you go and just be there? The parents are in." And she turned up at the school. It's called Cath West in Sydney. And she rang me up after the event. She goes, "I'm taking my son out to school right now, and I'm going to move him to the school. It is amazing." And they did the thing with no curriculum, very much like skills based curriculum. If you want to do Adobe, if you want to do proper certs in creative tools, you can do that. And she took a son Max out, and he went there and he excelled. And it's just having those options for students who might not fit into normal mainstream schools. It's great.
yeah, and we're seeing that more and more. And I guess you are probably seeing that, and as I guess a technology strategist and educator in schools, because you get to see such a breadth of schools, of opportunities for students.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm seeing that they're, like trade schools, no curriculum schools, specialist schools, um, vocational schools, whatever they are, they're these students who just don't fit on with the industrial revolution model,
Mm.
like jumping into these schools and are
Yeah.
just going. It's just like their eyes just
It's
start to
amazing.
glow, and they get a countenance that was lost, was beaten out of them because they didn't go this and this. It's just like, well, you can walk around, you can do this, you can play with that, you can, and and then bam, they're
Mm.
there. So
And that's the promise that AI brings as well. On the positive side of all of this kind of stuff. There's a lot of negatives that we got to be mindful of as well. But on the positive side, we've got an opportunity to have a tutor by the side of somebody, no matter where they kind of go in with their own learning themselves, something to support them. And I suppose it only dawned on me tutoring in Australia in the last, because I've never been a tutoring type of person. I'm like, you just go to school and you get it done, and and then my son was struggling in, like, I think he was English, and we tutored him, got him to a tutor, and then I realised that the tutor was doing his homework with him. So I'm like, actually, this is like it's like another person doing his homework, helping him, and it's sort of cheating because he's doing his own, but he was doing the homework that he wouldn't have done anyway. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something in this, and there's something about, you know, being able to be supported to finish the homework when you got somebody to help you. And now we're at that phase, all the research is pointing at, that Ray and I see, is that it's saying that kids are more like, the affordance is better with an AI than it is with a teacher, because they might be embarrassed to say to the teacher, oh, I don't really understand this lesson, I don't understand
Yeah,
ratio in the class. And I can, when I'm at home on a Saturday, I can ask AI, can you explain to me ratio like a 5-year-old, because I really don't understand this, or can you explain to me percentages again, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's got that promise to be able to support learners from all kinds of needs and different backgrounds. And that's the exciting bit, I think. Like, everybody goes, there's a lot of people going too far down the road of Gen AI and going, one model, what this, what that. And there's a lot of grift going on there. And I feel sorry for educators, because the majority are not using, they don't give a monkeys that they've got an option to choose models. They don't care if it's Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude or any of this confusing stuff. They just want to do simple things. And if it means you just, translating a lesson for a student in the classroom, or explaining a different way, if you're a learning support assistant and you want to just differentiate it a little bit, I'm working with Dan and he likes horses. Can we explain percentages in a way that'll help him understand him more? Things like that are just gold.
yeah, and that's how I'm using it. Like when I first, when it first sort of popped out, like I heard about it. I guess before it, I guess Midjourney was one of the first. My
Yeah.
son is in or was in the video design industry, video game industry. As you know, that industry is just in
Mm.
upheaval. So so many artists are out of work because the buck is more important than whatever it is. But that's a political story. We'll get into that another time. But they my ADHD brain just sort of lost where I was going. But he was in this industry and he was able to focus, and he was using Midjourney well before ChatGPT or anything came out. And I've gone, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, I'm glad you can use that. That's
Mm.
fantastic. He goes, yeah, it's on this thing. I'm showing my age. He goes, yeah, it's on this thing called Discord. I said, what's a Discord? I said, that was a punk record label when I was growing
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he showed me, and I thought, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And then all of a sudden, this Chat GPT started getting talked about, and I thought, oh, I'll
Mm.
play around with that. And then the first time I played with it, well, that's rubbish. I'm leaving that alone. But then it was getting more and more traction, and then the next model came out, or the next iteration came out, and so I thought,
Mm.
well, I'll have a play with that one. And look, I've been around ed tech for 20 plus years. In the subject area that I teach, there's always, new shiny things going, hey, this will change education. But there was something about generative AI that I thought, hold on, we've actually got to get a hold of this. Educators need to really look at it. They don't necessarily need to use it, but they need to get a grasp of what it actually is and some implications. And then, before you know it, Snapchat's got it. And then,
Mm.
you turn your phone on, you go to WhatsApp your mate, and it's there. And, so is, and we're talking about like teachers, they don't give a crap about what model
Yeah,
it is. And I think, ed tech has done a lot of damage to teachers.
yeah.
But is with what I did notice is that, Microsoft especially, in when it came to the enterprise release in schools, they
Mm.
were very, I guess, slow on the up in getting it into students' hands, into
Mm.
that student facing environment. Teachers had access to it, and it was fantastic. And
Mm.
I use it quite a bit. But is that a, oh, hold on, we've got to worry about lawsuits, or hold on, we want the best product that's going to get the best student output?
That's pretty much about cognitive development. We're really concerned about kids, a bit like the social media ban. I don't want to sound too altruistic about this, but we don't know what the effect of offloading cognitive intelligence is to kids who are young. So it's all very well to use AI when you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, because you've already, as a teacher, to write a report. I'll use AI to help me write one and I can look through it. If you're a student and you need to write an essay and you offload that before you've learned how to write an essay, then it's a very different ball game. It's good that we're talking about this, because I think there's two elements to it. The first thing is the teachers. So teachers are using, at the minute, consumer tools as well. So irrespective of which kind of company and whatever, they could be using ChatGPT, they could be using Gemini, they can be using the Copilot stuff, and all of those have got flavors of consumer stuff in them, right? And they train the models. And the problem with lots of schools and school systems in Australia is they're struggling to convert the Australian generative AI principles into something that's meaningful in the classroom. So if you ask most teachers in Australia, they don't know what the generative AI principles are. It hasn't disseminated very well. It's fragmented when it's come down, and nobody's really explaining it very well. The ESA have just released some modules for which we helped with for teachers, but not everybody's watched those. So at the end of the day, I think we've got consumer tools, and like you said, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and there's a danger. Lots of kids have been doing self-harm, dietary issues, suicide. They're becoming friendly with AI bots. There's an entire element of relationships. Even when ChatGPT's GPT-5 model got released, you had people like Leon and stuff saying, "Oh my God, this is a nightmare. It's lost its soul. This new model is a nightmare." And you can see society starting to become connected to this tool more than we should. We actually, because of its behavior, we're thinking that it's sentient. We're thinking, hold on, I'm getting a connection with this thing. And you can see why even educated people who are into AI are going down this rabbit hole. So what's that going to do to a impressionable kid, right? So to answer your question, I suppose teachers are in this muddle of using tools they shouldn't be using, because they can use ChatGPT, but don't use it for school stuff, because you can leak out PII into it. Don't put your financial information in it. So businesses as well are doing the same thing, not just schools. Businesses are using ChatGPT. Their marketing teams are using consumer tools and haven't been educated on that. And before long, they're going to leak out PII, personal information or product information, into like a large language model. And then, so that's one element. And then the other element is kids, and again, one of my bugbears at the minute is a social media ban in Australia. Where have teachers been involved? Where have educators been involved? How are we going to, we're censoring this stuff, and nobody's supporting the kids to say, well, how should we be using it? What can we use? And it's reminiscent of when we had Facebook first came out, and you've been around the traps long enough. You're in schools, Facebook came out, and schools banned it because they didn't want people using it. And we're in this situation now where parents didn't teach kids about it. Schools didn't teach kids about it. And we're in the same boat now with AI, where kids are going to be accessing Snapchat AI, WhatsApp AI, and having no guardrails on their consumer services. So, so to answer your question again, sorry, the 13 plus stuff that we've put in is one about you want to make sure you're releasing kind of the products that are decent quality for students, but also there's a concern that what effect a large language model would have on impressionable humans who are learning to think and learn, and offloading thought into a cognitive escalator rather than taking the stairs is probably the wrong way to go about it. But there's also the safety angle that you want people to play with this stuff, to understand how it works, and you don't want to lock people out of these tools. But it's a similar thing as booze and drugs and smoking. It's about responsible use, I think.
Yeah, and I've gone through mobile phone bans. They're back again.
Yeah, that's right.
social media bans. Look, I think, look, as a teen, like I was a ratbag teenager, and as soon as someone said don't do that, man, how do I get around it?
Yeah.
I had, even I had some friends who were skirting the wrong side of authorities, but these were smart kids.
Mm.
But you put them in a classroom, they're hopeless. But you tell them that there's a new alarm system out, and they get a circuit diagram and they can read it and they know. Like
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I had one mate who back in the late '80s, early '90s could hardly read or write,
Yeah.
but the new car alarm, the unbreakable one, came out. He worked it out that you just had to break a indicator bulb and it disabled
That's
the
right.
alarm.
Yeah, I had one of those cars. I had that in my Mini, and the indicator, it was all connected indicator. I found a guy unscrewing my. I had a proper Mini, not the BMW ones, the real ones. And a guy was like, you literally could unscrew it, and he'd unscrewed the light bulb and pulled the light bulb off to disable my alarm. So that's exactly what. Yeah, you're right.
And
I, I,
as soon as you ban stuff, kids are going to find a way.
yeah.
I think it's human nature anyway.
Hmm.
But we need to be educating. I think first and foremost, parents to go, hey, you
Yes.
guys have got to get involved in your kids' lives a little bit more with some of these things. Like we are only now seeing the ramifications of unfettered social media on the young mind coming out now. Like we see how much
Yeah.
mental illness, anxiety, stress. We've seen the bullying. We've seen the tragic events that's caused. So I think with going to AI, it's like no, don't ban it.
Hmm.
But some of the companies, look, everyone's out for a buck, and you said there's grifters everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be some ethical and moral imperative put in. But I think also I can buy a car, and yes, my speedo goes up to 200, but it's my responsibility
You're right.
to know
Yeah.
I've got
And
to I've got to
And
follow.
that's what we've done with the Copilot one, 13 plus, because you can actually give it to anybody. It's a little flag in Entra. We call it 13 plus because obviously in the US, social media and stuff, you got to be 13 and above, and that's what we kind of recommending it for. But if you're in a particular school and because the thing about the enterprise stuff, whichever company, like the Google stuff's got enterprise stuff and the Microsoft's got enterprise stuff. The thing about that is that you can audit it. And I remember once I was in a school in London, and it was a girl who was chatting to a guy in America, and a parent came in and said, like, I want you to ban her email. I've turned the internet off at home. I've done this, that, and the other. And I said, look, I'm not. I could ban it for you, but I don't think that's wise. What I'll do is I'll keep it on a school email, and we can monitor it because we can see it all, right? And we did that, and we found out that she was emailing this guy. It actually transpired this guy was a murderer in the US, and he
Oh,
was
geez.
chatting to her, and it was like, I'm like, so we had the Sapphire Squad or something from London Met coming into the school and kind of like they entrapped him and stuff. But the we did that because if we didn't, she would have probably gone to a mate's house or use something else, some other technology to email this guy, and she was carried on emailing him. So there's an element of that, because what people don't understand is that in terms of the tools you're using in enterprise tools like the Microsoft stuff or the Gemini stuff, the ones you buy in the school, then that they can be audited. So they're in place for auditing, for fraud, for any kind of messages. So if you've got a student, say an ASD students, and they're 11 years old, and you give them Copilot, what that means is, even as 13 plus, you give it to them, and you can have a conversation with parents, and you can say, we're giving that to these people, these kids, but it means we can audit everything they're doing. So if they have a conversation that's spurious with this, we can monitor it all. So there's this element of being able to support students with enterprise grade tools. But I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that does worry me, because teachers don't really realize and think about the ramifications of audit and legal hold and things like that, and PII leaking, because it's not what the game is, right? But if, say, you're a kid and you're online and you're talking about something, and then suddenly you're having a conversation and you start to get suicidal conversations or conversations about eating and food and things like that, then you can get into the spiral. And if you're not monitoring it, and it's in Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever.ai, then a lot of those platforms that you see don't have enterprise abilities to be able to analyze the back end.
Yeah, and look, I understood a little bit of why there's the enterprise products, but as a teacher, and I think I'm pretty I keep up
Yeah.
pretty much with what's happening. But even that, like I didn't understand that you just said, yeah, you can use, it's 13 plus, but if you're allowing a student who's younger than 13 to use it, you can actually go, hey, we've got some risk mitigation here that we can see exactly what they're doing. So we don't give them, unfettered use. When they're home and they want to use AI, hey, just jump onto their school computer or their school iPad or whatever it might be and use the school one, because at least then, we
Yeah,
can see what's
exactly.
happening.
And
And it
you know
can
what? You're spot on as well about parents as well, because it's one of my other bugbears is the is like Xboxes and PlayStations and iPhones, and I was also like like guilty of this. Christmas comes along, you give a kid an Xbox, you don't do anything, you just take it out. They take it out the box on Christmas Day, they spend like 3 hours downloading updates and stuff like that, and you don't set the parental controls on it. And it's the same with Apple device. I haven't got an Apple device myself, like an Android mobile phone, but it's the
yeah,
same on Android. And people give their kids phones and they don't set it up with parental controls, so you can't monitor it. You don't have any of the controls to support it. So, you know, parent responsibility does push in. And there is a big. There was a debate. I was in a panel about a couple of months ago, and the schools are pushing back on responsibility of parents and responsibility of school, and it's probably a mutual responsibility with AI, because you got to balance it out, and you got to have that education. And to be fair, adults have got, you look at family members like who are involved in different industries. How good are they at using AI? Probably not great.
yeah,
So we've got to due diligence to skill up Australians generally, not just through schools, but through our parent communities, to help parents who need to know about AI to support them in their work.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those technologies that has implications not just for education.
Mm,
Education is, the companies have seen, well, hey, this is a market that we can actually use, and we can actually train and develop these students so that, like, I can't remember the company offhand. I think I could be wrong, but I think it was Adobe. They were one of the first companies that go, hey, educators, here's our products, use them for free. And
mm,
so kids are using them, and teachers are getting upskilled, and then students are using them. All of a sudden, someone wants to be a designer or a typesetter or whatever it is. Oh, have you had experience with Illustrator, with Photoshop, with they want to be movie makers? Oh, have you used this? Oh, yeah, okay,
yeah,
straight away. So they've got that advantage of,
yeah.
hey, you understand the tools. And look, I've used CAD products from everything from, the free online stuff to, very heavily based subscription, very expensive stuff in various schools. And these companies do this for a reason, because they want to, one, get their product out there, but they want the next generation of people who can actually do they what the jobs are there, because there's people move in and out of jobs, so they want to
Mm,
fill those spots. So and I think with AI, like, I mean, we're in a bit of an echo chamber at times, but we see that, in marketing, in advertising, in definitely in education, there's all these people going, hey, here's the next shiny thing, you should use it. And we're going, well, maybe not. But then kids are going, hey, I'll have a crack at that. And they're making businesses and they're making things. I saw it was terrible. And it was an antivirus company, and I won't name them.
yeah.
It was a well-known antivirus company. I was playing one of my silly games on my phone, and the ad popped up for it, and I thought, your marketing team is terrible because you've just put out an advertisement where the person holding your product has 17 fingers that are interlaced, holding a box that is in the wrong position because you've just gone, yep, here's the prompt, and it's like, hold on, if professionals are doing that, what sort of where's the hope with the kids? So
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? Yeah, you're right, and yeah, it's disrupting a lot. Like, and I see it regularly, and I think, I'm in a privileged position at Microsoft that, I see win wires from everybody in Australia, and like every and globally as well, and you see like Commonwealth Bank did something the other day with agents. They did there was Bupa, they were doing something, and there's some stuff that's happening in healthcare which is amazing as well. But not only generative AI, things like X-ray imaging and stuff like that, which is I suppose
traditional
real
AI.
AI in the background as well. Yeah, normal AI, so there's so many things that are happening. It's disrupting a lot, and education, has got a really important role to be able to manage this going forward now. It's like, it's almost like you got all of this noise, all of this stuff going on, and every single educator and every single school has got to say, what's our viewpoint on this without particular context? We're an ASD school, so therefore this is what our context is, and this is what our point of view is, and this is how we're going to manage it. And we want to bring people into the workforce, and we want to engage kids thinking about this technology or whatever. And some other schools are going to do different approaches for this, but I think we've got to bring as well. You can rush slowly. You can think about it in a way that is going to help you implement it in a way that's not, too destructive, like we've done with the social media bans. I'm not saying don't use it, but I'm saying just thoughtfully think about how we implement it, and the implications on children's minds. That escalator and stairs element, and allowing people to think and have time to understand that before they move on to the next thing.
Yeah, give them the foundations of learning, and then show them how to critically think, how to
Mm.
analyze, and then, like, I mean, with you and Ray, you had a number of students
Yeah,
on there, and I think even your own
that's right. Yeah,
even your own guys, um, but they were sharing how they were using it, and I think that needs to be, I think, more widely spread because, look, pretty much most kids want to do the right thing,
yeah,
and
exactly.
they want to get to wherever they want to get to on their own merit, on their own skills, on their own hard work. And it's like they're almost nervous to use AI because of the barrage of, wow. And my bugbear has been, always will be, oh, it's a cheating tool.
Yeah,
Just let's just throw that out the window. That's what Encyclopedia Britannica was for. It was a cheating tool. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, that's right.
it just
Yeah,
took a little bit longer.
yeah,
But I think those views of these kids are going, no, hey, here's my thoughts, and here's what I've got to put this is my assessment, and this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me better organize my thoughts? What am I missing? Where do I need to, what can I improve on? And so instead of going, here's the assignment, here's the marking criteria, spit something out, it's like, here's what I'm doing. Can you help me make it better? And I
yeah.
think that's so critical, and that's what really needs to be pushed. And forget the negative. Let's look at the positives of how this can enhance our students, one, learning, but two, their well-being as well.
Oh yeah, and that was a finding that came out of the BC Brisbane Cath Ed study, was that they found that the well-being of kids going to exams was better after utilising some of the AI tools. So they were piloting Copilot 13 plus, and they were finding they were less stressed out before their exams because they'd asked, got it to quiz them and stuff like that. But you picked up two good points there. One is when I do with my kids, like, and you take Vince's interviews as well. It's really hard to get an actual accurate picture of this, and I feel again that it's still an echo chamber. Like Vince's kids, he brought on were amazing, but what about the other it's like when you see teachers, right? Like this has happened ad infinitum. Like people would say to me, "Oh, I was a STEM lead for Microsoft at one point and doing Minecraft and stuff." And you'd see a teacher doing amazing stuff, and you'd go into their school, and it's just that one teacher doing it, or maybe another one, and then nothing else happening in the school, And you're going, well, if you got that, or like people would do a STEM room with a 3D printer in and spheros and stuff. And, again, it's just one group of kids that would go in there at a time and things like that. So with my kids, like I did interview Tom because he was busy and he was at work. He's like in year 12, but his mind hasn't got around how best to use AI. My youngest son, who's 12, has worked it out straight away, and he's like, he's not 12, he's 16, sorry, and he's worked it out straight away, and he'll use it to do it to help him with studies and stuff, and he's kind of diligent with it and worked it out. Whereas Tom's like hasn't grown up through all of this kind of stuff, and he's just hit in now when he's doing his exams, and he's not using it as effectively, So I model it in the car by asking Copilot. He's doing his RSA, his like responsible service of alcohol thing the other day, and I was quizzing. I said he's got his test tomorrow. Can you give me some example questions? You've got to model it for them. And then Megan's using consumer tools, and the only danger we've got is if teachers are not thinking about the tools properly, then, and I don't want to sound, because you're right, you're so positive about it, and so am I, but the worry that I've got is if teachers are just firing out any old tool and saying, go home and do your homework using ChatGPT, then you're basically telling the kids to go home and use, cutlery and knives or whatever that they haven't learned how to use. Or a good example is soldering irons. When STEM was all trendy, teachers were trying to do all these projects and weren't really showing kids the basics of soldering irons and resistors and stuff like that. I'd be like, but people are showing kids consumer tools, and then kids are not really being able to, they're not governed by it. Parents can't manage it. If the kids are going back and doing ChatGPT and befriending it and creating GPTs to act like Daenerys from Game of Thrones or whatever, as a companion, then like we've got to be careful as kind of teachers, that we gatekeeping and being thoughtful about the tools that we share with the kids, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of I tell you what, it's a tightrope, and I don't think
Yeah,
there's. I think to try and solve the problem would be like to try and come up with a problem is virtually impossible, because you've got so many different factors coming in. You've got people, one,
yeah,
they want to make money. Two, they want to get their product out there. They want to say they're the best. They want people to use it. They do want the best for this, but there's so many competing factors that it's virtually impossible. But I think the key thing is about education and about I know for me as a teacher, I use very little student facing AI like Gen AI,
mm, mm.
and if I do use it, it's under very sort of quite strict protocols. But it's all about teaching them that it's a tool to help them, not it's not a product that you help.
Yeah.
And it's shifting that mindset to go, hey,
Yeah, I see every day amazing uses of it. I saw somebody the other day, and she's an English teacher, and she's struggling to get some of the kids engaged with English and writing paragraphs. So she generated an image just in whatever AI she was using, showed that, and then said, "I want you to write a prompt for me, like just on paper, write a paragraph to try to like copy that image, and it was a cat in a Blade Runner scene and all of this." And the kids are writing like loads because they were writing a prompt, and then she'd type it they'd see it on the screen, and the closest one would get like a prize. Like the amount of like innovation that people are doing, and starter activities, and I'm just about to teach year sevens, and I want to just make it a bit more engaging for area or perimeter or coding or whatever. Just being able to kind of do those quick starter activities and things, just see some amazing practice. Teachers like amaze me. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah. The last question I want to ask you, I guess, on that, because we could probably talk for another
Yeah,
hour.
yeah,
Is the governing bodies now is in Australia, definitely.
yeah,
So Brisbane Catholic, education, South Australia, New South Wales have put one together. Queensland State Education has just released, or about to release, Corellia. Oh, it's one of the
That's
local
right.
birds
Yeah,
up here.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
how
know, it's amazing.
is that? Do you see that as a I guess a critical thing? Is that definitely a need, or should it be? Hold on, each state has its governing body, but are we actually looking at how much overlap is it in these tools? Because these kids are going to, they might they might do their high school in Queensland, but then they're going to go to Sydney Uni, or they might study in Adelaide, but the only course they can do is in Victoria. So, whilst it's important, do you see that do you know of if there's any sort of, I guess, cross state talking, or is it just everyone's sort of, I guess,
Yeah,
have at
everybody's doing their own thing at the minute, and that's just the way that it's worked in Australia, I think. But there's a couple of observations of that. One is that, if you're not in those kind of schools and things, then you can do exactly the same stuff in Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat and the agents that you can create. The difference is that you haven't got the degree of kind of uh, need in the background, I suppose, to be able to then do more safety things. And you limited with the Microsoft kind of safety stuff, or if you're using Google Gemini, the Google stuff, right? But essentially, it's always a tricky one, because all of these are doing this stuff on the Microsoft Azure stack and using OpenAI. And it's amazing what they're doing, but then, never feel as if anybody's left behind with this kind of thing, because you can do it yourself in your own school for free, pretty much. But the school, it's a shame the schools are not, there's a couple of debates at the minute, one about doing something centrally for everybody, which again, I would also like argue, we're trying to make, if I was a school or a school system, is it worth me trying to make a car myself, or should I just buy one that's already made by a company that's going to be investing in that for the next whatever, So it's a lot of upkeep. It's more bespoke, I can make my own car, I can make it do my own thing, I can do that. Well, like the guitars I make, right? The guitars that I make, like, let me grab one. This thing here, this is like one of my guitars, right? Nice bit of sassafras wood from Tasmania there.
Beautiful.
So that costs about $8,000 to make. By the time you put your time in, the wood and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, if you got $8,000, you could go out and buy. Well, if you got $2,000, you can go out and buy a Martin guitar, which is amazing. Which, like, proper players play. So there becomes this element of, do I want to make one myself, or do I want to just buy one? That's why I'll never be able to sell my guitars, because people will go, I'm not spending $8,000 on that when I can spend half amount of money and buy like a amazing concert guitar for whatever, right? So this is the predicament you're in, where people are going to be making their own things. And the other angle to it is people thinking about sovereign AI at the minute, and we'll make our own Australian kind of models and things. And there's a good spirit behind all of that, and that's a good idea. But then you're also going to be competing with these large language models. It's all going to converge eventually. We're going to see a lot of these small, like, there's a lot of like AI tools out there that are supported by venture capital at the minute, like Toddle and the like. And it's, over time, you're going to start to see things like that fade away, because, unless they get sticky, they're not going to be able to support, they've got to sell themselves, or like Canva even, right? That's free at the minute for schools. Eventually, you can't just give stuff out. Well, maybe you can, but you can't just keep giving things out for free forever. So like you got to be, because this costs a lot in the background, right? And you may be able to do stuff philanthropically, but schools are going to see a lot of convergence of the tools. Maybe the states will talk together and build their own, but then I'd always argue, well, like, is it worth it? If it was me, I'd be thinking, well, if I'm going to spend a lot of money making my own AI, I've got to justify why I'm going to do that, rather than give teachers a pay increase, or whatever, controversial kind of thing, but or invest in classrooms and whatever. So it's got to give me enough return on investment that is going to be great. And some of these things have been developed too. But what they're starting to do as well is like diversify. So the South Australian one, which is amazing. And now they've done the same thing, but they've added to careers now. So they've created careers coaches at the end of it, which is amazing. So that's something that you can't do out of your normal LLM. You're not making your own ChatGPT now. You're starting to tailor it for, career coaching and understanding the data of the kids, and then starting to think about, okay, well, Dan's had all of these results. So what kind of career might he be interested in? And what does he need to do to study that? And, all of those kind of things. So they can start to make really cool stuff. But again, the government policy is slow. Australia generally has been slow on the uptake. And you've seen these big investments in the US now, the UK. And we need to get on board with this pretty quickly. So I hope they do something to support the states individually to drive this agenda, I think.
Yeah, that was a bit of a devil's advocate question.
Yeah, no, I know, no, totally.
But,
Yeah, I
but
have that conversation all the time, though.
yeah, it's like, yeah, and I think the schools could then take those, and then because school A, might only be 3 kilometres from school B, but they have a completely different demographic. They have a completely different way that, and so they can't just go, all right, cut and paste. It's got to be, okay, here's some sort of major scaffolding and some framework that works. Here's how it's, but now you feed your information in.
Yeah.
You put it into, almost, very rudimentary, but like that blocky coding type of thing. It's like, okay, I want A to be B, and then okay, I'm going to put my stuff there because I know that if I put it in there, it's gonna work in that way. So, and I guess that's like you said, what South Australia's doing. They built their main one for schools, and then they've gone, okay, so it works like that. Let's add, if what then.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And people are going, well, we've got this tool now, but like with the chatbot element is kind of one element. Then you go into the agentic AI, creating agents and stuff, and then you go, well, how else can we support teachers with this? And so you just come up with all these different ideas, and then you go, okay, well, what about a career one? What about something about well-being? Let's analyze, support kids' well-being, and you've got a granular control on all the safety and security tools with it, that they can then monitor and work out. But for the people listening to podcasts who think, I'm not in a department school or whatever, you can do all of that in Microsoft Copilot Chat for free, and you can do it in Google Gemini as well, or if you've got the education version of it. So you haven't got the granular controls like of like I've got on the guitars that I make, that I can make the soundboard a certain thickness, and I have particular elements and particular woods in there. But you can get a bloody good guitar out of it. You can get a good system going. But I do feel sorry for teachers in this world at the minute, and workers generally, really, because it's coming very, very quickly. And I think, in a job, normally, if you're in a marketing role, you can just let AI come at you and you can use it and you can do stuff. But we custodians of kids' lives and children's well-being, more than I'd probably argue that's why we need teachers more than ever, because we need the relationships, we need the connections, we need the ability to have the kind of relationships and communication in a school setting. And when technology is coming quite quickly, we need to be thoughtful and guide to this technology as it comes out.
Absolutely. Well, you couldn't have said it any better, Dan. I know I definitely couldn't have said it any better. And it is my heart, like with and with so many people that I've spoken to, especially educators, that it's about that relationship. And it's about these students, these children that we are, are bringing through, because they're going to be the next leaders. They're going to be the next developers. They're going to be the next guitar makers. The next, whatever they might be. And I think if we can teach them to be humans in a world that's appears to be overrun by technology, we know it's not. But if we can get them to go, hey, let's talk to people and then work it out and place the value on their thoughts and their ideas and their creativity, I think we'll be we've got a positive future.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, thanks again, Phil. Your podcast is amazing. Thanks for having me on your podcast today, and I really appreciate the time and the energy you
Oh,
put into it. It's amazing.
oh, mate, no, thank you very much for coming on.
No
You
problem.
have a lot of plates in the air. But my very last question, I couldn't leave without it. But and this being the Tattoo Teacher podcast, Dan, do you have any tattoos?
Do you know what? I was going to ask you this myself. Like I was 50 in May, and I want to get one, and it's like I've followed all these Instagram accounts and working it out, and I might get my daughter to like draw one or something, but I like I've got to get it done quickly. So have you got any ideas what I could get? Maybe
Oh,
AI.
hey, you could get what was his name? Clippy.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, that would be a bad idea. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when I get one, I'll let you know. I did. It's going to be my like kind of 50th kind of thing. I'll probably get addicted then, and you never stop. My stepdaughter's got heaps of them. Yeah, it's like it's
Well,
great.
that's the problem. I got my first one when I was 30, and then and my wife goes, yeah, you're just getting one, and then
And I saw the Metropolitan one there. That's the French Metropolitan line one, isn't it?
yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so a lot of like all my tattoos have meaning, and I like to get them from places that I've visited. So and like and being a creative and an artist as well,
Yeah,
like see that font in itself is just amazing. And then
it is phenomenal, isn't it?
but then walking down the streets of Paris and seeing the sign there, and
Done. Yeah.
absolutely. Well,
Thank
Dan,
you so much.
thank you so much for your time. I'm going to put links to your podcast, your LinkedIn page, and anything else that you'd like me to put in where people might want to get in contact with you.
Yeah, no problem. Reach me through LinkedIn, reach me through the pod page. And yeah, if anybody's got any good stories, join our pod, join this pod, just share. That's what we need.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll get some good stories out there. Dan, thanks so much for your
Okay, mate.
time. You have a wonderful
You
evening.
too. Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.